Hello and welcome everyone. Today's video features the brand new Tier 5 Royal Navy premium battleship, the HMS Agincourt. The Agincourt has just come out of NDA and has proved to be quite a little interesting battleship at Tier 5. I've played this ship quite a bit during testing and ended up finishing on a complete secondary build. Now this might sound a little bit unusual considering the current plight of secondary build battleships since the captain skill rework, but the Agincourt has proved to be surprisingly fun, and I must add it feels quite effective. So before jumping into the complete review guide of the HMS Agincourt, let's start as usual by quickly putting up the captain build that I've been using during this gameplay footage. As you can see here, I have gone for Pyrotechnician in the first slot, and some may find this a little bit unusual as there are other options like preventive maintenance and emergency repair specialist for the tier 1 skills. And I must say this secondary build did feel not only quite effective, but I stress a lot of fun. I purposely avoided using the Deadeye skill during testing, as for all intents and purposes that skill is now dead and gone with update 0.10.4 about to go live. So it felt just right to go and play with a secondary build and try and extract as much fun as possible from what I think is quite a fun little ship. So moving on to the armor layout, you can see here by a simple port screenshot, HMS Agincourt gets a bow and stern upper plating of 19mm. The main armor deck comes in two sections of 38mm, an upper casemate armor of 152mm, and a main armor belt of 229mm. Now this armor is further reinforced by having both an icebreaker bow and stern, consisting of two sections of 102mm and 152mm. So the armor for tier 5, it's not that bad. The Agincourt's turrets get a frontal plating of 305mm, a side plating of 203, a top plating of 76mm, and finally a rear plating of 254mm. And one final stat on the ship's armour, the superstructure gets just 13mm of armour. So all in all, the armour layout is not that bad. This is further reinforced by having 48,400 hit points, a torpedo protection damage reduction of 14%, and with this build using Superintendent, the Agincourt gets 5 repair parties and the standard damage control. So let's move to the fun stuff and start with the main battery. HMS Agincourt gets 14 305mm guns in 7 dual mounted turrets, 2 fore, 2 centrally mounted and 3 at the stern, one of which can rotate 360 degrees. These main battery guns have a reload time of 36 seconds, which is a little bit on the slow side. They can rotate 180 degrees in 37.5 seconds. They have a max firing range of 15.3 kilometers, with a max dispersion of 213 meters at that range. The Agincourt's high explosive shells can inflict a max damage of 4400. They come with a 34% chance of setting the target on fire and can penetrate up to 76mm of armor. The Agincourt's armor-piercing rounds have a max damage of 8100, and both shell types have the exact same shell speed of 831 meters per second. Moving to the secondary armament, and this is where things start to get a little bit interesting. HMS Agincourt gets 2 gun calibers in form of secondary armament, 76mm and 152mm. Starting with the 76mm gun caliber in the form of 10 single-mounted 76mm turrets. They have a reload time of 2.8 seconds, max firing range of 8.3 kilometers, a shell velocity of 823 meters per second. They can penetrate 13 millimeters of armor, inflicting a max damage of 1100, and with a 6% chance of setting the target on fire. Now this is using the skill Pyrotechnician and signal flags. Now the majority of the Agincourt's secondary armament consists of 20 single-mounted 152mm guns. These 152mm guns have a reload time of 4.3 seconds. They can inflict a max damage 2200, and most importantly, they can penetrate 25mm of armor, and they have a faster shell speed of 914 meters per second, with a very high fire chance of 14%. So all combined, 30 secondary guns, 2/3 of which are very effective against anything with 25mm of armor, including destroyers, cruisers, large sections of low-tier battleships like bows and sterns. So these 152mm guns feel very effective, in particular with the high fire chance. So it's one of the main reasons I've gone for Pyrotechnician, just to increase the meme factor and try and squeeze as many fires out of these guns as possible. So right now you might be thinking, this sounds pretty good. 14 main battery guns and 30 secondary guns that all seem quite effective. Now, unfortunately, this does come at a cost, however. The Agincourt gets 0 AA. And when I say 0, I mean 0. I had a very funny experience early on playing the Agincourt in randoms. One of the first games I jumped into, I can remember coming under attack from an enemy Japanese carrier, the Ryuho, and as the enemy planes came in, I pressed O to reinforce my priority target sector, and nothing happened. And suddenly I'm sitting here clicking my keyboard thinking that something is broken, and it was only when I realized back in port that this ship has 0 AA mounts. So that's the AA on the Agincourt, very quickly covered. It doesn't have any. So this does pose a problem when faced against enemy carriers, and there is quite a high population at lower tiers, in particular when you get tier 4 games. Double CV games are very common. One should be very careful about not getting isolated, in particular against enemy CVs, because you will pay a heavy price. Even fighter planes that's circling overhead, you are simply unable to shoot them down. You have nothing to deal with them. So moving to the maneuverability, the Agincourt gets a base max speed 22 knots. It does feel pretty slow, but it is quite normal for this tier. You can, however, increase the max speed to 23.1 knots using the Sierra Mike signal flag. The Agincourt gets a turning circle of 670 meters, which is quite good, and a rudder shift time of 13.4 seconds. So finally, stats-wise, we come to the Agincourt's concealment rating of 52, which equates to a detectability range by sea of 11.9 kilometers. And now it is important to remember I'm not using concealment expert, so this is really quite good. And your detection range by aircraft is 8.7 kilometers. And so my final thoughts on the Agincourt. I must admit it's the first time I've had fun playing a secondary build again since the Captain Skill rework. I really did find that Agincourt performed particularly well in smaller maps. In particular, same tier matchmaking, the Agincourt did feel quite beastly. Now, just like any other tier 5 battleship, when up tiered you do have to be much more careful in your approach, but that goes for all tier 5 battleships when forced to fight tier 7 opponents. Any smaller map that provides extensive island cover, I found the Agincourt worked really well indeed, being able to use this island cover to approach to within secondary range, and I found that the Agincourt performed really quite well in 1v1 close engagements. I'm using here the island to block line of sight with the other two battleships on my port side, just to solely engage the battleship here approaching on my right. The two battleships have no angle of fire, and here I can just bring my secondaries and main battery guns to bear. Just fired a little bit early there. My rear guns catch the top of that island. And angle like this, being able to bring your secondaries are just about to start firing. This was a very strong mode of engagement, in particular against 8 enemy battleships. Now the damage from these secondaries, they mightn't appear to be fantastic, but when you put an enemy under constant fire with a very nice fire chance, it's quite easy to force them to panic and make mistakes. We've got this battleship now in a nasty position. He's in a 2v1 situation. Secondaries still firing away. Thinking about getting my main battery guns on this enemy. Just gets undetected. There's a Fuso there behind. A little bit concerned about my broadside here. Queen Elizabeth burns down to my fires from the secondaries. Can only fire my rear guns, that Iron Duke. No, I'm just going to circle around this island. Secondaries aren't firing, means they don't have firing arc over this island, so I'm going to have to circle around. I played this game just before the release, so you can see it still has test status. I don't actually get the Kraken Unleashed achievement. This Fuso is quite healthy still, but that Iron Duke is very close to dying. He is on fire or flooding. I can't see exactly which. I do think he's on fire. Fuso has turned in. 5700, 2 ricochets, 1 torpedo protection hit. The AP against angled battleships can feel a little underwhelming. There are multiple scenarios where one is probably better using HE to apply maximum pressure to an angled target in combination with your secondary guns. Secondaries open fire. So still pretty well angled. It's able to apply pretty decent damage to me even though I am properly angled. Still quite easily able to pen at 19mm of upper bow armor to set him on fire, and our Farragut takes him out with torpedoes. I hope you all enjoyed the video and I was able to provide you some useful information on the HMS Agincourt. I'd like to thank you once again all for watching. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe for more. Take a moment to check out some of my most recent videos and leave a comment below. And until the next time, keep sailing it like you stole it.